Our first speaker is Simon Bennett, who started with the OWASP Zed Attack Proxy and leads the international group of volunteers who developed it. And in his day job, he actually works for the Mozilla security team as a security automation engineer. So welcome, Simon. And,
thank you very much.
And our second speaker is Dan Cornell. Dan has over 15 years experience architecting and developing web-based software systems. As Denim Group's Chief Technology Officer, Dan leads the company's security research team in investigating the application of secure coding and development techniques to improve web-based software development methodologies. Dan was also the founding coordinator and chairman for the Java Users Group of San Antonio and currently serves as the Open Web Application Security San Antonio chapter lead and is member of the OWASP Global Membership Committee and co-lead of the OWASP Review Project. So, Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. I think we'll turn it over to Simon here.
Okay, thanks a lot. So ZAP is a tool for finding web application security vulnerabilities. It is open source and completely free, so there's no pro version. It's also very community focused. We have lots of people contributing to ZAP, and we always welcome new people. ZAP has got both automated and manual features, but I'll be mostly talking about the automated ones today. So hopefully you can see ZAP now. So this is what you'll see when you start looking at ZAP. And there are various ways you can test applications. But I'll start off with the quickest way, which is using the Quick Start tab, not too surprisingly. And what you do is you put the URL of the application you want to attack into that address bar and press the attack button. Now it's important to note that you should only attack applications that you have permission to attack. And in this case, that's an application that's running on my local PC, which has got some known vulnerabilities in. So what happened there very quickly was that ZAP ran the automated spider. So the spider is a traditional spider that looks through the responses to find all of the links and crawls the application. And then ZAP used the automated scanner to find vulnerabilities. And we can now see it switch to the alerts tab, and we have a look. We can see that it's found various alerts, including cross-site scripting vulnerability. If we click on that, we get details of it, and ZAP actually shows you the vulnerability in the response. If you double-click on that element in the tree, you'll actually be able to see more information, and you'll be able to change it if you want. So that's a very quick way of finding vulnerabilities in applications. It's very effective, but there are some problems with that. One, it doesn't handle authentication. It just follows the links it can find, and it can't put sensible input in like login information. So for that type of thing, it's actually the best way is to proxy your browser through ZAP and explore the application in that way. So I'll now switch over to a browser, and this is the budget store, the application we're testing. And you can see we're actually proxying, well, we're proxying through ZAP right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the login page, and I'm going to log in to the application. As you can see, I'm now logged in as this test user. If we switch back to ZAP, we will see that we've already got some information about the site from the spider. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to flag this part of the application as a context. And in this case, a context just means that it's a set of related URLs. In this particular case, an application. And actually, if I show that information again, you'll see that, so that is the URL that we're including. I have a whole set of these, and I'm going to rename it something a bit more sensible. And it is in scope as well, which is why you get the target icon. And what we can do now that we've defined this as a context, we can actually find the login request, which is that one there. We're posting details. You can see the request where we're sending the username and password. And I'm going to right-click that, and I'm going to flag it as a login request. And so you can now see that the URL and the post data are recorded. And the other thing I need to do is to let ZAP understand when you're logged in and when you're logged out. So I'm going to select another node, this one which is found by the spider, and if we have a look at the response, hopefully we'll see somewhere that login link. So we're going to select that, right-click it, and flag it as the logged out indicator. So what that means is we actually now have told ZAP how to log in, and we've told ZAP how to understand whether you're logged in or not. So if I go back to the browser, I'm currently logged in. What I'll do is actually log out, and you'll see that I've changed back to the guest user. And in ZAP now, you'll see that there's a new icon enabled on the toolbar, which is automatic reauthentication. I'm going to click on that, and then when I go back to my browser, if I click anywhere, I will automatically be logged back in as that user, because ZAP has detected that I'm logged out and used the information I've given it to log back in again. And actually, if I try and log out, it will still log me back in. So it will carry on doing that until I disable that option and manually log out again, and then I'll stay logged out. So what that means is you can then actually use the spider and the automated scanner to explore and test an application that is protected by authentication. So I've shown you the quick start, and I've shown you some of the manual testing. You can also test your application using regression tests. If you've got any that drive a browser or make HTTP requests, you can actually proxy those through ZAP. And that's a very effective way of automating your security testing. So ZAP, you can actually drive ZAP via an API as well. So if you point your browser at the API, at the port that ZAP is listening on, you get this welcome screen now. And it also shows you a link to a UI around the API. So you can actually control a whole range of things. So you can control the spider from here, you can control the automated scanner, and you can get information. So you can set information like the login URL and all that information. I'll just prove that by going into looking at the logged out indicator, select the context, and you'll see that that is the information that ZAP is using to detect that you're logged out. And this is the URL that you can actually use to drive the API directly. So ZAP can be controlled by the API. You don't even need the ZAP running, the UI running. You can run it as a daemon in the background and just control it completely via automated tools. So one last thing a couple of things I'd like to mention. One is that ZAP has a whole load of features, but there are actually more things you can install. So we have a set of add-ons that I've already got installed. We have an online marketplace that has a whole load of other add-ons that we're adding to all of the time. And these you can discover these and download them, install them, and keep them up to date, all from within ZAP. The other thing is we can get information from the UI, we can get information from the API. We can also do things like save it. So we can export reports. In this case, I'm going to generate an XML report, and we can save this information in an XML file locally, which can allow other tools to read it and do whatever they want. And there you can see the information that is displayed in XML. And that's all I'd like to show you at the moment.
All right, thanks a lot, Simon. We're going to go ahead and transition over to Dan. Of course, if you have any questions for Simon, go ahead and put those into the chat box right now, and we'll address those as the call moves over. So, Dan, we're going to go ahead and take control of the presentation and go from there.
Thank you. And all right. And so what we just saw from Simon there with ZAP is how you can set up to do testing, both automated and manual, for web applications. One of the things that I suspect many of the folks on this call may have noticed is that your organization doesn't just have one web application, but it has multiple web applications probably developed and managed by different teams spread around the world. And another thing you all may have noticed is that those applications have a tendency to change over time. They don't just get deployed once, they get deployed over and over again. And so another freely available tool that is, that may be of use to you in your organization is a tool called ThreadFix that we've developed. And ThreadFix, again, it's open source. It's freely available under a Mozilla open source license. the 2.0 license. And what ThreadFix does is it kind of picks up and takes the results of ZAP and other tools like it, and it lets you store them in an enterprise-style console. And as we'll see, what it lets you do is it lets you manage the teams, it lets you manage the applications that your teams are building inside of your organization, and it lets you manage the results of testing activities, for example, like we just saw with ZAP, manage that over time and across the portfolio so that you can start to gather data on your software assurance program to see what kind of testing you've been doing, how successful that has been, and watch things like trending over time. So ThreadFix, it's a web-based application. It's written in Java, in Spring and Hibernate. And you log in. You can either log in with local accounts or connect it to an LDAP or an Active Directory server. And so when you log into the application, what ThreadFix first shows you is a list of all the teams you have in your organization that are developing applications. And so here, with just some sample data, we've got a team in Atlanta that we picked up from an acquisition. We've got our internal IT group, a couple of offshore teams, and so on and so forth. And what we also see here is the number of applications that team is managing, as well as just a quick summary view of the open vulnerabilities for those applications. If we drill into the e-commerce team here, what we see is the e-commerce team is managing two applications. One is the main www site, and the other is a partner portal. We see where those are hosted. We see how critical those applications are considered to be, and that same type of information about the currently open vulnerabilities. And so, of course, you can go through and add teams. Add teams. Here's where we would go through to add an application, and we can go in here to look at the partner portal application. When you go in to look at a specific application, you see all of the currently open vulnerabilities for that application. And so let's take a step back and look at how we got to that point. So if we go in and add another application, we'll call it the new application. We'll say that this is a critical application. We'll leave this stuff alone for now. But we've created a new application. So for this application, we want to go in and upload a scan. We'll pick a channel, which is a type of scanner that you want to associate with this application. We'll go down in this case and pick the OWASP Zed Attack Proxy. We'll choose the file that we want to upload. In this case, we'll go in and upload a sample file that we've exported from ZAP, just as Simon showed us before. We upload that scan, that goes on a queue, and then that gets processed, and so we see the results of the scan that come in here. And so if you repeat this process over time, so in this case, we'll assume that we have uploaded the multiple scans over time. So as new vulnerabilities show up or as vulnerabilities go away, ThreadFix does a diff of your most recent file against the previous file to identify when new vulnerabilities appear, as well as when vulnerabilities go away, as well as when vulnerabilities potentially resurface. So if you imagine continuing this over time, for this application that we've created, as well as for across all of the applications in your organization, that lets you start to track and do trending. And so we can go here and look at reports. And so, for example, we can do a trending report, to look across all the applications that we've got in the portfolio. In this case, we can see as new applications are onboarded, we identify new vulnerabilities. Sometimes vulnerabilities go away and vulnerabilities resurface. And we can do this reporting either across the entire enterprise, as we see here, or we could also go in and look at a specific team or even a specific application, and look at trending over time. And this is here we're looking at the partner portal application for the e-commerce team, and we see that when we first ran a scan, we found 16 vulnerabilities, and as we ran subsequent scans, we see a number of those vulnerabilities have been fixed over time, and so we can see that trending. And so that starts to be helpful because if you're doing this testing, you can start to represent to management, we're doing testing and we're finding fewer vulnerabilities over time. Or you can say we're doing testing and the developers are introducing new vulnerabilities. But the important thing is that you're starting to gather data about your program. Also, looking at some other reporting, it's great to see the overall trends, but it's also important to see how successful is your team being in remediating different types of vulnerability. And so we can run a report that shows the vulnerability progress over time. And so here what we see is a report that shows us the different types of vulnerabilities we've identified, the total number of those vulnerabilities that have been found throughout the testing. And again, this reporting can be done across the enterprise. It can be done for a specific team, or it can be done on for a particular application. What we'll see also is the percentage of those vulnerabilities that have been fixed, the average age of the remaining vulnerabilities, as well as the average time to close. And so this starts to let you look at your software security program in a much more quantitative way, because you're not just looking at a single application. You're looking at all the applications or across your teams, but you're also able to see the progress that your organization is making, not just in scanning and finding vulnerabilities, but in remediating and resolving these vulnerabilities, which is a really important part of programs that a lot of organizations miss. There's a variety of other reports that we can run, but I want to look at one in particular, which is the portfolio report. And what that lets us do is look across the portfolio and see how recently have we run scans. And so here we see this broken down by the critical, high, medium, and low applications, and we can see for our critical applications what percentage or what number and what percentage have been run, have been scanned in the past month, the past 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and so on. And so what this highlights in this case is, we've got a number of critical applications that have been looked at in the last 3 months, but we've got one that was looked at only a year ago. And for our high applications, we actually have 2 of those applications where we've never actually run scans against those. And so as a person managing a software assurance program, what this lets you do is get a quick look across your portfolio so that you can make a determination, am I spending my assessment resources? I have limited time that I can use to have people look at applications, do scanning. Have I allocated those resources such that I have recent security information about the most critical applications that we have? Am I allocating those resources appropriately? And so, in addition to that, much as Simon talked about with being able to drive ZAP via the API, you can also drive ThreadFix via a REST-based API. So you can generate API keys and do things. If you have automation where you're using automation to run ZAP scans, you can also then, in an automated way, take the results from the ZAP scans and upload them via the API key and the REST API, upload those to ThreadFix. And so you can start, between the combination of these freely available tools, you can start to roll in these types of continuous integration security testing checks and to collect the data, again, so that you can watch the results of your scanning activities over time as developers introduce new vulnerabilities, as new vulnerabilities are introduced, as vulnerabilities are resolved. And again, it puts, with the combination of these 2 freely available tools, it puts you in a position to start talking in a much more quantitative and programmatic way about the, about your software assurance activities versus having just a very, application-specific or even qualitative view of what you're seeing. So in this case, we've looked at examples, obviously with ThreadFix of uploading the result files from ZAP. We can also pull in results with ThreadFix from most of the major commercial and open source, both static and dynamic analysis tools. And just like ZAP lets you do manual analysis, ThreadFix also lets you store the results of manual security testing. If you're doing manual penetration testing or manual code review or things like threat modeling, those can all be stored in a central way as well. I think now we'd like to open up for a couple of, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Dan, I got a couple questions that actually came across. So Simon, this is actually directed at you. So people are kind of inquiring about the future of ZAP. Where is it headed, and what's kind of on the horizon?
Well, there's a couple of things which I think is worth mentioning now. One is something called Zest, which is something we're working on at Mozilla right now. That's a tool-independent scripting language specifically for finding and reproducing web vulnerabilities. So we're actually building that into ZAP and into other security tools as well. It's early days, but that's available as an add-on now that you can download and pull into ZAP and have a play with. So I'd be very interested to hear any feedback about that. The other thing is we're going to be taking part in the Google Summer of Code this year. We did last year. That was very effective. We had 3 great students who put some really good work in. And we've actually got 6 ZAP mentors this year. So we're hoping to get more students. And we've got some really great projects. So if you're actually interested in working on ZAP, and if you're a student and you'd like to get paid to work on ZAP over the summer, then please have a look at the Google Summer of Code and get in touch.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Okay, so actually we had a similar question regarding ThreadFix. Dan, people are curious to kind of know where the next steps of ThreadFix are going, so if you can kind of talk through that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so ThreadFix has been in development for a couple of years internally. The 1.0 release came out last September. We had a quick follow-up, kind of bug fix release shortly after that. The 1.1 release came out about a month ago, and the 1.2 release, we're looking for a release candidate for that actually pretty quickly here. Which is, I believe, in about 2 weeks, we're hoping to have the release candidate for 1.2. And so what you'll see in 1.2 are a number of user interface and user experience updates. We're switching to use a lot of Twitter bootstraps. The user interface is going to look a lot more modern. The current user interface looks a little bit like I designed it, mostly because I helped to design it, so we're moving to a much cleaner user interface, which I think people will appreciate. A lot of common operations will have a lot fewer clicks that you have to go through to successfully do them. We're also adding some dashboarding features, which has been a request from a bunch of our enterprise customers that we have that are using this. And so that's coming out with the 1.2. With the 2.0, we've got some exciting stuff where we're going to, that'll probably be mid to late summer is what we're targeting, and we're looking at adding some scanning, orchestration, and scheduling capabilities inside of ThreadFix as well as some other stuff. And so, yeah, we're getting a lot of great feedback from the community, and we're excited to have an opportunity to roll some of that stuff in.
Excellent. Okay, next question is ThreadFix able to import Syntax Hailstorm XML formats at this time?
At the current time, it is not. We support most of the commercial dynamic scanners. We don't have Syntax Hailstorm right now. If folks have an interest in that support and are willing to work with us, there's a pretty straightforward API for creating additional plugins and support for that. If somebody is interested in helping to build that support, certainly reach out to me. Dan at denimgroup.com, and I can help to get you set up to do that. If somebody's organization wants to sponsor that support, they're more than welcome to pay for that, and that's a request that we get from time to time, and so I think we will be looking to support that in the future.
Excellent, excellent. So one person had a question is, how do you actually in the system actually go through and flag false positives in ThreadFix?
A great question, and so basically one of the challenges, again, you see in a lot of cases, with applications or with scanners is that you have false positives. One thing ThreadFix lets you do is it lets you go through, after uploading a scan, you can go through and mark different vulnerabilities. So you go to the list of vulnerabilities and you can go through and mark those as false positives, and then they will disappear from the screen. And you don't have to deal with them. And that decision is durable over time in that it like the next time you upload a scan, when the diffing process runs between the newest scan and the most recent scan, if the newest scan still has those false positives, they will still be treated as false positives, and you won't have to deal with them again. However, you can go to this view and unmark screen to identify or to look at previous false positives and make a determination if you want to roll those back into being treated as normal results. And so that's something, again, as you're managing this program over time, we give you the ability to do that.
Excellent. Looks like one more question so far related to ThreadFix. So the question is revolving around the Fortify 360 channel. What file format is actually expected on that upload?
Yeah, and so the Fortify support looks for an FPR file. So if you're generating FPR files, that's what we want to see. And in the documentation for ThreadFix, one of the things that we mentioned, like if you go to the wiki and look at the different support that we have inside of, we've got a variety of things here, but for each of the scanners, it should talk about, if you look at the documentation for the static or the dynamic scanners, it should talk about what file format it expects, and I think it also provides you with some tips about that when you're uploading scans. Just so that you know which, if for pieces of software that have multiple ways to export results, this gives you, it provides some guidance on what it expects to see.
Okay, we're closing in on that 30-minute window, so I wanted to ask a couple questions on Simon real quick. So how And there actually is another question coming. I'll follow up here. So how can people get involved in the OWASP ZAP project? Do they contact you directly? Can they contribute code? What are kind of some next steps if somebody wants to get involved?
Well, we've got a wiki, so we actually got a wiki both on the OWASP site, but there's also one on Google Code, which we tend to use for more of the detailed stuff. On there is a section about how you contribute to ZAP. We welcome all contributions. So that could be code, it could be testing, it could be translating. We've actually translated, I think we've got some like over 30 people translating ZAP into different languages, which is very unusual because I think most security tools are in English only, but ZAP's available in a whole wide range of languages. But yeah, if you want to help out with the testing or suggesting new ideas or reporting false positives, someone already mentioned, I mean, false positives are always a big problem for security tools, but please report them. You know, if you tell us where we get things wrong, either false positives or false negatives, then we'll do our best to actually fix those.
Excellent. And I'll propose the same question to Dan. So Dan, how can people get involved? What are some kind of next steps where if people want to contribute code or engage in a group?
Yeah, and so again, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Dan at denimgroup.com. We also run a ThreadFix Google group. If you, for all the participants, we'll send out kind of some notes on this and let you know. We'll send a link to the Google group. Please join up with the Google group. That's where we have a lot of release announcements where people also ask questions about onboarding apps or setting up different things. And so we're starting to see some more traffic in that area. With the Google group, obviously, if you find bugs with ThreadFix, we've got the Google code site here. You're more than welcome to go to the issue site and submit different bugs that you might find. We've worked with a number of folks who've said, they've got a particular technology. Again, the case might be the same with the Sensic importer. We've got folks that are working on and making improvements to the Nessus importer. Other folks that have user interface improvements. And so if you have code or feature requests, feel free to submit them to the bug tracker. If you've got code, please reach out to us, and we'll talk about the kind of the process for getting involved. But we love to see. One of our big goals with ThreadFix is to put the people who are responsible for, to put a great tool in the hands of people responsible for software security. And so we want to know how your program is working, how, what your concerns are from a user experience standpoint so that we can be responsive to those. So please feel free to reach out, complain about features that aren't there yet, weigh in on how you think things need to work. That feedback is the breakfast of champions, and we love to hear from folks about it.
Excellent. We actually have another question that just came in, and of course, feel free if you guys have got to jump off. We'll actually stay here and answer questions for several minutes after the presentation. But a question just came in is, how do you suggest that large sites should break out the scans for ThreadFix to work effectively?
Okay. And so one of the questions that you have, it comes down to your decision. It's really more of a question with your scanner of what you want to treat as an application. What an application is in ThreadFix is really what you determine it to be. And so some organizations, use, it's the host name they treat as an application, and all the code that runs underneath that is treated as one. In other organizations, they have one host name, but there's 100 subdirectories under that, and they treat those as 100 different applications. That really comes down to the question for your organization. What does your organization consider to be an application? What are the units, or how are those broken up? And so you can do that. It's really a question with your scanning technology. If you're running, if you're running ZAP tests against like specific chunks of it, and you want to keep track of those chunks separately, create a separate application for each of those chunks. Or if you're just running large monolithic scans, then and that is the way that you view an application. Then I would recommend that you do that. And so it really, ThreadFix doesn't have a strong opinion, as it were, on what an application is. That's kind of determined by your organization and how you're using the different scanning technologies and how you want to be able to report kind of the granularity at which you guys want to treat that.
Okay, so I believe, if anybody else any more questions, go ahead and feel free to type them into the chat box. We'll kind of hang on here for about 30, 45 more seconds to see if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for attending. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email if you've registered. We'll just include kind of a link back to this recorded audio, contact information for for Simon and Dan, and of course to kind of cover, where do you get ZAP, how do you get involved, things along those lines as well. So it looks like we had one more question come in. What are some of the other tools mentioned by Simon besides ZAP? Simon, we'll direct that to you.
I mentioned Mozilla Zest, so Z-E-S-T. If you do a search for that, you should find it. So that's available. That's actually, we've done an add-on for ZAP, so you can download that from within ZAP right away. But Zest is actually tool independent. We have a Java implementation, but it's not specific to any language. So I think we're working on a JavaScript implementation as well. So yeah, have a look online.
Excellent. We'll include a link to Zest in the program notes that we send out afterwards.
All right. Well, looks like we're wrapping up, guys. Yes. So the session was recorded, and we actually will provide a link to that. We'll most typically host it on YouTube, so you can actually link that to people as you need. So there you go. Yeah. So for people who weren't able to view and install the WebEx, we will have a recording for this available later on. So I want to thank everybody for your time, and we'll be following up here shortly. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.